Games Workshop has many secrets and a lot of seriously deep lore, much of which they admittedly keep smokescreened by stringing us along for decades with teases and truth mixed with lies. When it comes to Warhammer 40K's deepest and darkest secrets, such as the Lost Primarchs, the true origin of the Golden Throne, the true loyalty of the Alpha Legion, the list goes on. These topics are often discussed as if there is no answer. There will never be an answer, and there was never intended to be an answer. But it turns out, this may all just be a lie. A big fat line of BS that Games Workshop has been running interference with for decades, allowing them the flexibility to still tell the same stories, but to give them a longer timeline to do it in. That is, if the comment left on one of my recent videos by a viewer claiming to be a former employee of Games Workshop in Canada is indeed true. And I for one have no reason to believe that it is anything otherwise. Now, some of the questions that remained long-standing mysteries in the Warhammer 40K lore have now been answered. And some, well, they took decades to come to fruition. So it is no surprise to me that Games Workshop and Black Library's game plan for all of these darkest corners of the lore actually exists, and they've just been lying to us. So this video this person who worked for Games Workshop Canada left their comment on was the one I did on the Trefoil Legions and their Primarchs, which was digging into some seriously old lore going back to 2003. Well, my Eldar Wraith Lord went undefeated for an entire edition. But here's what they had to say, which I found very, very illuminating. To play Alfarius for a moment and add some conspiracy fuel to the fire, I worked for Games Workshop Canada as part of the team that ran Games Day Toronto during the early years of the Horus Heresy novels and had a bunch of behind-the-scenes conversations with Dan, Graham, Laurie, Alan Bly, the folks that were building the core narrative. As part of that, I learned a lot of secrets. Loken surviving Istvan, Vulcan being a perpetual, Magnus being connected to the Grey Knights, the dragon being on Mars. Stuff that's now common knowledge, but at the time wouldn't be revealed for years. Naturally, as a 40K fan and an Alpha Legion fan at my core, I pushed a little bit to see what I could learn. Like, are the Alpha Legion loyal or traitor at heart? What's their end game? Did Guilliman actually kill Alfarius? And was told very firmly that they can't tell me that, which was notable because they were very free with a lot of the other secrets. So I asked them if those questions actually had answers, or if it was purposefully left unknown even to the authors, and I was told that there was, effectively, a black book of secret truths and core mechanics of the universe that Dan and Laurie held, and only a few core Horus Heresy authors had access to at the time. It was simultaneously a list of topics that had to be kept consistent even in a series with purposefully unreliable narrators, but also a list of things that were not to be directly discussed. The example I got was what the Golden Throne is, where it came from, how it works. Now, I can't begin to tell you what else was in that document specifically, but I do know it existed, and I did get the strong sense that the Alpha Legion were a solid part of it. Now that the Horus Heresy series is complete, and knowing the things that were revealed through the End in the Death, as well as the Bequin novels, I fully believe that the lock has been taken off. When I learned these things, 40K was still a static universe. No Primarchs had come back, the Horus Heresy series was in its infancy, Descent of Angels had just come out to relatively poor reviews, and they really had no idea how massive the series would become. But the fact that a hint of this was touched on with Pariah in 2012, a book that had its sequel delayed by 9 years until the middle of the Siege of Terra, really makes me believe that they've had plans in motion with this material since the very beginning, probably with the expectation that it would be revealed sooner rather than later, but that the drawing out of the Horus Heresy series, plus the reboot of the main timeline, has kept it under wraps even longer. Anyway, do with that info what you will, but just wanted to chime in and say I super loved the video, and as someone who has always been digging at all this deep lore for going on 2 decades, I'm right there with you. Wow, I just can't stop my head from spinning. I'm about to vomit up pea soup like Linda Blair. So, there's a black book of secrets, and now the Horus Heresy is concluded, and they seem to be about to rip the Band-Aid off. I have searched the Games Workshop website for hours on end, the community page, and the Warhammer YouTube channel, and they have completely taken it down. But their whiteboard that was shown last year for the Nova Open, I believe, when doing the Warhammer 40K roadmap, had insane things written all over it, and a few post-it notes also stuck to it. It said, Krieg, Eldari Phoenix Lords and Aspect Warriors. It said, Emperor's Children, every Chaos faction, Fulgrim, Perturabo, Lorgar, and Alfarius. Then had a post-it note with the words, every Chaos Primarch. Then it also said, Lost Primarchs. Now I remembered thinking that it was a big deal, but they were just seriously teasing us. But then it dawned on me that they would have to be major douchebags to do something like tease us with such sensitive topics. Then they scrubbed the video from the internet. Then that roadmap started to play out. Guys, it's all leading up to 40K turning 40 years old, which is right around the corner. It is going to be insane, and everything that is in that black book, and it all ties into Pandemonium. It's all coming. Why wouldn't they make 40K as epic as possible? Anyway, why wouldn't they drop a Malibron on us when Gilliman calls for his brother's release from the Black Cells? Why wouldn't they finally let us know exactly who Cypher is and what he wants? I mean, at this point, I stopped caring over a decade ago, so it wouldn't even be ruining anything for me. It's great to know that if this is true, they've had a plan all along. I grew up with Warhammer. I mean, literally before there even was a 40K, I was playing fantasy. So I can remember people arguing when they started to tell us about the Horus Heresy and the Primarchs. But yeah, people were saying that the mystery was better than knowing. But at this point, going on 40 years deep, let's know some of this super deep lore. Let's break out the black book of secrets and pull forth the most amazing things from it. There's so much lore to explore, and so many things to speculate about. It's time that this paid off for some of us who are lifers. To go from a child into a middle-aged man pushing 50 and still be wondering some of the same secrets is one thing, but they constantly tease us, and that's frustrating. So predictions for Warhammer 40K turning 40? They'll crank the wars up to 11. Most, if not all, Primarchs return. Karandras still won't get a model, and they'll act like he never existed even in the lore because Troy emailed the STL file to Lithuania accidentally and was fired and Games Workshop forgot. And the Yellow King storyline comes to a head, and the tables are turned. The Imperium invades the Warp the way Abaddon keeps leading Black Crusades into real space. Let's see, Vashtor and Abaddon's storyline will be completely ignored. And finally, Big E will finally die, and the throne will fail. Though he'll be resurrected like Vulcan or Gilliman and live again. Somehow the Star Child will play into this, and it will all result in a $129 model of the Emperor that sells out in 23 seconds.